What you're about to hear isn't just another message about kindness and unconditional love. It's a deep dive into the human psyche that uncovers a truth. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists in history, discovered after decades of studying the soul. If you've ever felt that your kindness turns against you, that people mistake your nobility for weakness, or that the more you give, the less you receive, this message will show you why. Jung noticed a disturbing pattern. The people who believed they were too good often suffered the most. But what does it really mean to be good in today's world? We've created an idealized image of goodness, a person who's always available, who never says no, who forgives without hesitation, and who constantly puts others first. Jung realized that this version of goodness wasn't just wrong. It was dangerous, because when we confuse kindness with self-sacrifice and see love as the absence of boundaries, we become our own executioners. Jung uncovered something unsettling. The more we strive to be perfectly good, the stronger our shadow becomes, the hidden part of ourselves that we deny, suppress, and bury beneath layers of forced niceness. It's like trying to hold a ball underwater. The harder you push, the stronger it fights to rise. Imagine your kindness as a bright light. Society teaches us that in order to keep that light shining, we must shut off everything else, our anger, our needs, our limits. But Jung saw how flawed this idea was. True kindness doesn't come from denying who we are. It comes from embracing every part of us. How many times have you heard that inner voice whispering enough, only to silence it because a good person wouldn't think that way? How many times have you buried your anger, your frustration, or your pain, thinking these feelings make you unworthy? Every time you reject these parts of yourself, you don't become better, you become more broken. This message isn't telling you to give up on kindness. It's calling you to awaken from naive kindness and transform it into something deeper, stronger, and more complete. True kindness isn't the absence of darkness. It's the ability to integrate every part of who we are into a whole. What you're about to uncover might shake everything you've believed about goodness. It might challenge old beliefs about love, sacrifice, and authenticity. But if you dare to listen, if you allow yourself to question what you've always taken for granted, you'll discover a truth that frees you. True kindness doesn't weaken you, it empowers you. It doesn't drain you, it fills you. It doesn't make you smaller, it makes you whole. This is the dark but honest wisdom Jung left behind. To be truly good, we must first become truly whole. That journey begins by facing the shadows we've worked so hard to deny. When Jung spoke of the shadow, he wasn't talking about something abstract or symbolic. He meant a real psychological force we all carry within us, a part of ourselves. We're taught to fear, repress, and disown. It's where we hide what we think is unacceptable. Our anger, our deepest desires, our right to say no, and our need to be seen. For those who consider themselves inherently kind, the shadow becomes a terrifying place. Their identity is built around being the light, always helping, never failing, being there for everyone. The thought of having a dark side fills them with dread, as if admitting it would destroy everything they think they are. But this denial comes with a heavy cost. When we reject our shadow, when we pretend it doesn't exist, it gains power. It becomes uncontrollable. It's like trying to hold back a river with your hands. Eventually, it breaks through. Repressed. Energy doesn't disappear. It twists, mutates, and emerges in ways we can't control. Overly kind people experience this in subtle but destructive ways. It appears as resentment after helping someone who never returns the favor. It shows up as silent anger when others cross invisible boundaries. It turns into deep sadness when they realize no one truly sees their needs. The more we strive to be perfectly good, the more vulnerable we become to our own shadow. It's a strange paradox. Deny your anger and you become passive-aggressive. Reject your need for recognition and you become subtly manipulative. Pretend you don't need anything and you become an emotional vampire, unconsciously draining others. According to Jung, the shadow isn't our enemy. It's an essential part of our inner world. It holds not only our negative traits but also our unclaimed power, our ability to set healthy boundaries, to stand up for ourselves when needed. When we reject the shadow, we don't just lose our darkness, we lose part of our light. Imagine someone who spent their whole life being the good one. They were taught that anger is bad, that setting boundaries is selfish, that their needs come last. This person doesn't just suppress their anger, they suppress their personal power, their ability to say no, their right to take up space. Their kindness becomes a self-made prison. Jung understood that this isn't real kindness. It's fear disguised as virtue. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of not being enough. Truly kind people aren't those who never get angry or never set limits. They're the ones who've learned to integrate all their parts into a coherent whole. The shadow, when acknowledged and embraced, becomes a wellspring of strength. It's like a dark garden. If we dare to enter, we'll find not just our fears, but also our deepest powers. That's where naive kindness transforms into conscious wisdom. For Jung, true spiritual work isn't about eliminating the shadow. It's about learning to dance with it. It means recognizing that our ability to feel anger is just as sacred as our ability to love, that our boundaries are just as important as our generosity, and that our need for recognition is just as valid as our desire to give. This is the first step on the path to a more authentic and powerful kindness, realizing that the shadow is not your enemy, but a part of you that has long waited to be seen, embraced, and honored. And when you finally dare to meet its gaze, you'll find that what you feared the most might be exactly what you needed to feel whole. Blind kindness comes at a cost paid not only in emotional exhaustion, but in delayed dreams, unbalanced relationships, and a half-lived life. It shows up as the constant fatigue of those who give endlessly, the silent frustration of those who suppress their own needs, and the deep loneliness of those surrounded by people who never truly see them. Think of someone who has made self-sacrifice their identity. This person gives not just their time and energy, they give away essential pieces of themselves. Every time they ignore their own needs for the sake of others, every time they silence their voice to keep the peace, every time they say yes while their soul screams no, they're paying with fragments of their essence. The modern martyr doesn't wear a visible crown of thorns. Their suffering takes the form of sleepless nights, worrying about others' problems, of relationships where they always give more than they receive, of a schedule so full of commitments to others that there's no space left for themselves. It's a way of life that society not only accepts, but praises, without seeing the deep self-neglect that lies beneath that apparent nobility. Jung observed that this pattern of self-sacrifice often has deep roots in childhood. Maybe you were the child who had to be the good one to keep peace in the family. Maybe you learned that your worth depended on how much you could do for others. These early lessons become invisible chains that bind us to self-destructive behaviors. The relationships of someone who practices blind kindness follow a predictable script. They become everyone's confidant, the shoulder to cry on, the unwavering support. But when they need help, they're met with an unsettling emptiness. People become so accustomed to receiving from them that they never even consider offering anything back. It's a unique kind of loneliness, being surrounded by people who know your kindness but not your heart. The exhaustion of constantly giving isn't just physical. It's a soul-level fatigue that drains not only energy, but the joy of living. It's like a slow spiritual death, where the person gradually loses touch with their own dreams, desires, and needs. They become an empty vessel, existing solely to fulfill others' needs. This imbalance creates a toxic dynamic where the kind person becomes increasingly indispensable to others while becoming increasingly invisible to themselves. It's a form of codependency disguised as virtue, but in truth, it's a self-imposed prison. This person becomes a resource to others, slowly losing their own humanity. The cruel irony is that this excessive kindness doesn't just hurt the one practicing it, it also harms those it's meant to help. By constantly rescuing others, by always being available, by never letting them face the consequences of their actions, the chronically kind person stunts the growth of those they're trying to save. This behavior pattern doesn't just drain you, it breeds resentment. The resentment of someone who gave everything and received nothing in return, of someone who was there for everyone, yet finds no one there when they need support. And when that resentment is buried under layers of kindness, it becomes a poison that slowly seeps into every relationship. This is the real cost of blind kindness. We don't just lose our energy, our time, or our peace of mind. We lose connection to our true essence, to our deepest desires, to our ability to set healthy boundaries. We become diluted versions of ourselves, existing mostly in service to others' needs. Integrating the shadow is not a smooth or comfortable process. It's a journey that demands courage, honesty, and the willingness to face what we've long avoided. It's like turning on a light in a room that's been dark for years. At first, it feels uncomfortable, maybe even terrifying. But once we start to see, the shadows lose their power over us. True kindness comes from a place of integrity, wholeness, and emotional alignment. It doesn't ask you to sacrifice yourself. It asks you to honor yourself while honoring others. It's a kindness that sets boundaries, speaks truth, and recognizes that you are deserving of the same love and care you offer the world. This is the kindness that heals. This is the kindness that transforms. The path to true kindness begins with the courage to face your shadow. When you embrace it, you'll realize that what once seemed like your greatest weakness is, in fact, your greatest strength.